Hello and well met. This is Laerun with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. Today I am going to be taking a look at the Cyberpunk Red Ruleset again. I haven't visited it in a while. There's been a couple small DLCs released recently, and there is an official Syrinscape Cyberpunk sound pack available for the Syrinscape player. There are not any created SoundLink modules yet. I imagine that will happen sometime in the future. If you watched a couple episodes back where they had Steve Barr on from Syrinscape, he did mention that you'd like to have some Cyberpunk official sets created, but that may take a while because they still got to do more D&D stuff, and of course they have to do Pathfinder and all that other stuff. So it might be a while before we get an official Cyberpunk Red version. However, if you're familiar with Fantasy Grounds, you have a license, you have the Cyberpunk Red Ruleset, and you have some favorite maps, you can actually put in your own sound links and your own maps. You don't have to rely on someone else to do that, although it is very time consuming. So if you have the patience and you can wait, I imagine, probably by next year they'll have Cyberpunk Red Ruleset official links for the rule set, or maybe sooner. And then also you can buy the packs individually, but it's better if you buy the Syrinscape Super Siren subscription. Then you get everything, and you can use the integrated sound links within Fantasy Grounds. Otherwise, you have to kind of manually link it and create all your stuff on your own. You might be able to use Matacure's extension. I don't know if it works for core or for just the base of Fantasy Grounds, but that might be an option too. But this is mostly just covering if you have Fantasy Grounds, you have the Cyberpunk rule set, and you have access to the Super Siren subscription. So I wanted to get that out of the way. Another thing is that I got the maps that I'm going to be showing from CyberMaps. This is a Patreon that I'm subscribing to. They do other maps too, but this is their sci-fi division. I kind of like the idea that there's more than just D&D out there, and this actually has quite a few cyber maps. So there's like rooftops and nightclubs and all kinds of really cool stuff. And some of these are or at least half of them are animated. So if you're someone who's a big fan of the animation, this might appeal to you. The coolest one I found is the moving subway. So I'm going to work on that one today. I will do a little bit of line of sight, some conversion stuff, and then possibly get started on a sound pack. And what I've found that's useful is if you find maps that you're going to use quite often in Cyberpunk, like maybe a real basic battle map or some sort of scene, like this is going to be a subway, so this would be good for the tram system. Anything like that to embellish your games, kind of expand on them, and have stuff ready to go when you need it. I think this is a good way to go. So we're going to kind of create like a little mini kit just in case we need a subway chase scene or a fight or something. I think this would be a good way to go. So I downloaded the files already, and I'm going to take a look at them and make sure that that they're compatible and that they will work with Fantasy Grounds. So I'm not sure what format they're in. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. So that way we can, if we have to, we can convert them and use them for Fantasy Grounds. So what I'll do is, so while I'm downloading this is a nightclub that I'm going to put together later. I'm going to go ahead and jump over to Fantasy Grounds, and I'm going to go and bring up Shutter Encoder. So this is what I'm using to convert the map over to Fantasy Grounds. So before I do anything, I'm going to right click on it and go to File Information. So this is a handy tool to use for converting. So right off the bat, it's a VP9 file. So I have to convert that to a VP8. And if there's any audio, which there is, it looks like, you have to also cancel that out. So this is the first thing you want to do is look at the format. And in this case, it's VP9, which is a higher quality file, and it's actually smaller. But the problem is it has audio tied to it. And then it's a VP9 instead of VP8. So Fantasy Grounds, it's built on the Unity game engine, and that engine does not support VP9 natively. So you have to convert it. And then the Fantasy Grounds stuff doesn't support embedded audio because some of the maps already have like sound embedded into them. So I got to take that out too. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. And I have the file here from my hard drive. And this is the moving train subway. It's kind of pretty neat. I'll show you what this looks like before I convert it. So this is the moving train. So really it's not the train moving, but it gives you that illusion because it's actually the sides moving. And this map in the center is static, so you can use this for a battle map. But I think it's really cool. It gives that really cool illusion, and it really pops. And then, you know, when you're running an adventure in this, it's just going to be really cool. So I'm going to do this one first, and then what I'm hoping and praying is that the Cyberpunk content on the Syrinscape player has some subway sounds. I'm pretty sure it would. And if not, I'll just use some basic sci-fi sounds and such if I need to. But this is the WebM file that I'm going to convert so I can use it in Fantasy Grounds. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. And this is what I have loaded in the, this is in the Shutter encoder. So the function is I want to convert it, and this will convert to lots of different programs, but I want to go to VP8. And then immediately it comes up with this, and you got this, you can change the duration and all kinds of stuff. But the only thing I want to really mess with is the audio setting. So you want to click on that. And right now it says Opus, stereo, blah, blah, blah. So I want to click on no audio. So I want to strip that out. That also reduces the file size a little bit. So if you leave the Opus on there, it does increase the file size a little. And let me see. So it's 59 megabytes. I don't know if why that's still 58. It saves one whole little meg, but still, I mean, it's one thing less you don't have to deal with. And then the other thing is look at the quality of it. You don't want to mess with it unless you really know what you're doing, but this one is 1920 by 1080. So that's fine as far as file size goes. It's pretty reasonable. It's not too big. Unfortunately, when you convert these files to VP8 from VP9, the total file size does increase a little, but the upside of it is that VP8 files, they include more of the encoding data, so it's not as hard on your CPU. VP9 files trade performance for file size and quality, so they go for the looks and, you know, and the compression, whereas VP8 is more kind of standardized, and it doesn't have as much compression, and it has more of the encoding data inside of the file itself or in the container that hosts it. So you don't have to be as hard on your processing unit as much as a VP9. So that's the difference between the two. But VP9s are smaller, and they often are higher quality, usually 2K or 4K. In this case, for a game, you know, for a home game, I'm not too worried about it. But in regards to performance and such, I would be a little bit adamant about using Syrinscape and a VP9 video file that's shared with a group and streaming it all at the same time. That might be a little rough on your bandwidth when you're streaming and such, but in this case, I'm going to convert it down. And what's nice about this is free. It does a lot of different things. As a matter of fact, it just had an update. It was one version 17.2, now it's at 3, and it is absolutely phenomenal for a media converter. It has uses beyond just doing it for this, so it's kind of a good thing. And then if you do tokens by chance, most tokens don't have audio associated with them, but there is a setting in here, and it's under the special advanced features, and you want to click on enable alpha channel, but that's only for tokens. Maps, you don't normally have to worry about it. It's just tokens if they have a clear background or transparency. You want to keep or preserve that alpha channel. Otherwise, if you don't, you're going to get a black or a white border around it. So if you're doing token conversions, make sure that you enable the alpha channel. That way it preserves the transparency. But in this case, we're just doing the subway. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the start function. It's going to do the conversion. You get a progress bar. Now, I warn you that if you do a bunch of these at once, it's going to tie your system up. So if you've got a ton of them to do and you want to do them all at once, either do them in smaller batches so you're not tying your computer up for over an hour, or run it at night when you're getting ready to go to sleep or before you go to the store or something like that. That's if you're going to do a large batch. But in this case, we're only doing one file, so it should be fine. And when it's done, it'll actually open up the window, and then I'm going to put this in Fantasy Grounds and then do a little bit of the line of sight type stuff on it, just so we can use it. So once you convert this over to the file format that you want, I'm going to go ahead and close this. It creates a file called webm_vp8. So that's how you can differentiate between the file you converted and the file that you have. And in this case, it actually lowered the file size because we removed the audio, and likely we didn't have a 4K image in this. Or we did have a 4K image in this, and this compressed it down to smaller file size. So it's a little smaller. In some cases, though, the files would be a little bigger. But we went ahead and stripped the audio out, and we converted it to VP8. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this file and copy as path. Oh, no, I want to just hit copy because that's what I'm going to, or cut. I'm going to actually cut it from there and paste it into Fantasy Grounds. So when you're in the Fantasy Grounds interface, I'm going to be going into the assets area, which is up here on the right, and it's this little jigsaw puzzle piece. And I'm going to go under images, and then I have a campaign folder already, but if you don't see that, when you do start putting content in there, that folder will show up. So I'm going to click down here on this folder, and it's going to open up the back end. And these are all the assets that I've already put in there. So I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm going to just call this is going to be like the subway thing. So I'm going to go, let's see, new. And I'm trying to keep these kind of organized so it's not a big mess. So I'm just going to say subway. I'll say Cyberpunk Subway Animated or something. That way I know. Maybe I'll put an ANI or something like that, so I know it's animated. Maybe I'll start with that. That way it sorts better. So let me go with ANI _ and then CP Subway. So it really does make a difference on how you label your content, because it helps when you bring it up in Fantasy Grounds. And then inside this folder, I'm going to go ahead and paste that file in here. And now what I want to do is probably rename the file at this point. I don't need the VP8 and that in the file. So what I might do is just change this so it makes more sense to me, and just put, I'm going to put moving subway. And I forgot to do animated, so ANI. I'm going to do that for now on as my naming convention for animated images. So animated _ moving _ subway. And that way, when you put it in the files, it will show up that way, and you don't have to rename it in Fantasy Grounds too much. So here's the file itself. So what I'm going to do now is refresh the assets. It's a very important aspect of this. So you need to click the refresh button on the bottom, and it will pull in any changes that you've made to the back end. So if you've added files, you have to do this, or otherwise they don't show up. So now that we have this campaign folder, I'm going to go ahead and open it up. And it looks like it's taken a few seconds, and I'm not sure why it's bogging down, but I imagine it's because I got some big files in there. So if you're having performance issues and it's getting harder and harder to open files, you may want to consider consolidating and getting rid of stuff you don't need inside of your assets folders. But in this case, this is the subway. And if I click on it, I can see the background moving, so that's a good sign. If you don't convert it, it's just going to be a blank. Or if it has audio embedded in it or sound effects, it's just going to be a blank thing, or it'll give you an error. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Create Image Record. But before I do that, I want to go over here to the Images folder and make my own group. So this is going to be called Subway Scene. I'm going to make this a unique image folder for this particular set, and that way when I use this, I'm going to actually export all this into a module. So then I'm going to load up as a subway module, and it'll all be there. I'll put some gangsters in there, and just kind of some low level stuff, just to kind of make it, or some writers, like some interesting writers, like an old lady, a guy with a boombox, just your typical public transit folks. And then I might have a couple gang members, and then maybe a transit cop or something like that. So we'll see. Or maybe it's a bot. It could be a robot, a security bot or something. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and click on the add category. And this is going to add a generic title, group 1 or group 2. So I'm going to edit that, and I'm going to call this, we'll call this a Cyberpunk Moving Subway. And this will be just the name of the folder, and I think that's what I'm going to call the whole thing. So when I create stuff for it, it's going to be the map, it's going to be some encounters, it's going to be some web links that go to Syrinscape for sound. Everything will be contained in this, and then when I load this module up after I export it, I won't have to do a lot of this again. I can change it a little if I need to, but I want a starting point, and that's kind of what I'm working on here. So there's the category, and now I'm going to select that category because I want to use that for my, maybe I don't want to put change, because Cyberpunk is too overly used. It's hard to sort like that. Let me try the other. Let's try another. So I can go CP Red, and I think that's already used too. But at least, yeah, see, there's some CP Red here. So what I might do is go to, I might call this Urban. Well, everything's urban, so that doesn't really help. How about just Subway? And that way, it's kind of redundant though, but Subway, Cyberpunk. Actually, I'm going to do map underscore Cyberpunk. There we go. Maybe even animated map. That'll even be better. Now I'll just say map underscore Cyberpunk moving subway. There we go. So it does make a difference. That's why I'm fussing over this, because when you have this list here, you want it easier to sort through. And these all say map, map, map. So this is map with just no plural. So that kind of helps with the sorting. And then it has an underscore in there, and then the rest of it. So we'll see. So now that I have that selected, now I'm going to create the image record. And ideally, you'd want to do this all at once, but in this case, we're just going to work on one map. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Create Image Record, or you can import down here at the very bottom of the images window. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Create Image Record. And here's the image record. So this map itself is kind of oriented with kind of a vertical or horizontal. So you want to shape this window out here as kind of like the shape of the subway, right? You don't need a big square. You need a kind of a rectangle. So I'm going to right click after I stretch the window out, go ahead and hit View, and then zoom to fit. And that should be closer to what you want to see when you're showing the map, or when you have it presented in Fantasy Grounds. And I might butt this in a little bit and then put it over here in the corner so it's not in the way. And then this other stuff I'm working on, I'll just move all this stuff over here so it's out of the way. And this is something that you'll have to get used to with Fantasy Grounds is managing windows. A lot of people get frustrated with this, but it is a thing that you got to deal with. So with that there, I think I'm going to go ahead and add the static images just in case. So there are 2 images that come with this. I'm not going to do that now for the sake of time, but I'll add the static images which are not animated, and that way I have a reference point, or maybe it's a DM map or something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting in the line of sight. So I don't want to block the movement outside. So I think the best way to handle this is just to use glass, because if I put just a regular wall, like a line of sight wall around there, they're not going to be able to see that effect. So honestly, I think just some cubes with the glass on there, like a window, might be better. Or maybe just even, yeah, I think glass will work on the overall part of it. So using a window instead of, instead of something solid, and then just have like dividers in between or something like that. So let me think about that. So if I put glass on there, the players will be able to see the moving subway part. They'll be able to see through it, but they can't go through the wall. So that might be the way to go. So let me check this out. So I'm going to go to the line of sight tool. And in this case, I don't mind, but I could put all of these, the line of sight on the map itself. But I'm just going to make sure I don't have anything selected. I kind of want it to make a different layer. So maybe I'll do this in cubes, like in blocks, overlapping blocks or something. I don't know. But it's hard to kind of make a window and then put a door in it. So that might be an issue. I might have to do but then I'm going to have to put individual windows in. So I'll give it a shot. We'll see how this turns out, because if the players look out the window, they're not really going to see a whole lot of this out here. So it's kind of a difficult task. So maybe I will just put glass around it and not worry about the obstacles. Maybe I'll put a small thin wall in between these with the door, so that way they can get in and out. That's what I'll do. So I want to go ahead and go to the window tool, and I'm just going to make some rectangles for each car, and then I'm going to go ahead and make some doorways. So this is kind of what I'm going to be doing here. So this is just going to be for this car, and I'm going to do the same for this one, and just kind of go down this list as needed. And right in here. And then, of course, this one. It's kind of interesting because they're moving a little bit. Okay, that's about right. Okay, so there's the window. So the reason I did that is so the players can see out the window still. They can see the whole map, but they're not going to be able to walk through the walls. And then in this case, for a barrier, what I'm going to do is actually all I have to do is open the window. Let me check that out. Let's see how this works. So if I go to play mode and I go into this type of mode here, that's player mode. So if I can just open these up. So when they want to go to another cell, they'll be able to move through these pretty easily. Okay, that's okay. That's not too bad. I mean, that's a good compromise, because I want them to see the artwork. That's the cool part about this, is it's a moving subway. So if I put line of sight on there, it's the walls, or the red walls, it's going to be too hard to move to see outside unless I make individual windows, and then they may not be big enough for them to see outside. So I don't know if this is going to be good or not. This is where play testing is going to come in, if that's the case. But now you can put a grid on this, which is probably the first thing I should have done, which is the first thing you should always do. So I'm going to turn on this grid, which isn't quite right. I read somewhere that these are either 55 or 120. So in Roll20 or in the maps themselves. Oops. So that's 120. That's definitely not it. 110, I think, is what he had said. Yeah. So there's a point where you have to know kind of what size that these are in. So I'm going to go ahead and move this over. Usually you can just move the map over, but in this case I'm going to move this and move this down, and I can go back actually to the area where they actually had the map. So if I go to this Patreon, and then I'm going to go to the Cyberpunk maps. This guy actually puts the dimensions in there, which is handy because a lot of the authors don't really give you the information. I'm not saying all of them, but there's quite a few that just put the maps out, but they don't tell you the dimensions or much about the file size at all. So that can be a little frustrating. But if you come over to this particular patron, this is Cyber Maps. I mean, I don't have any skin in the game here. I'm just a customer. I'm not trying to necessarily promote them, but this is where I got the map. So here's the moving subway map, and sometimes he'll put the conversion notes in here, but I don't see that in here. Let me see. if this one says anything. Oh, that's for a higher patron. Yeah, so this one unfortunately doesn't have it, but I think I can wing it and just kind of go with 50 or something like that. So let me try that. So go with 100 instead of, and then move this into place, see if that actually helps or not. I'll figure it out one of these days. I'm not too worried about it, but that's why you want to do this first, because if I move the map, which I would normally do, it will change the dimensions of the line of sight. So that's why you have to want to start with that. So that's kind of about where I want to be. Let's try 70, because that's the normal. Yeah, so 70 looks closer as far as scale goes. I don't know what scale he used, so that's why I'm kind of guessing at this point. Yeah, so this is not the right dimension here for this. So let's try 55. I know that's closer because his other maps are that way. Because some of the maps he gives you the actual dimensions. Yeah, I think this is at 55 right here. Yeah, it's pretty close. I mean, that's about as close as you're going to get without breaking the bank. But I think in future hindsight here, I think I'm going to be using doing a little bit more of this. And also when you convert it to another file format, it could also be wrecking the dimensions of it because you're converting it. Okay, so I got it figured out. So this is 60 by 60. So that's pretty good. So now that the grid is set, and it does look right as far as the size goes, it kind of fits. So I'm going to go ahead or you can change this to 30 if you want. I mean, that's the other, but I think that's too tiny. I don't know. What do you guys think? 30? We'll try it. Let's see what 30 looks like, because that'll make these about half the size. Yeah, that might be it. Let's see here. Yeah, so I got to move this down a little bit. Oops, move that up, I mean. Yep, that's a lot closer. But see, as you can tell, it's a kind of a pain in the butt if you don't know the scale. There we go. So it looks a lot closer. Now I'm going to go up to this top corner and see where we're at. Yeah, that looks right. So I got it recentered, and I'm going to change the color because it's too washed out, especially on a gray kind of map like this. So I usually use like yellow because that's rarely a used color in a lot of the maps. And then I'm just going to turn the opacity down a little bit so that way it's not too annoying. And then there we go. So this is better. This is a lot closer to scale because a chair isn't going to be like huge like I had it before. So this one's a lot closer, I think, than the other. So that's a lot better. All right, so now that we have that figured out, if you go back to this, we can put like some floodlights here. So let's do that. So I'm going to go to the lighting tool. And then I'm going to temporarily turn off the grid. And then in the lighting tool, I'm going to go with a, let's go with a lantern. I guess that's the closest we're going to get, or a lamp. So lamp is stationary. And then for this, we're going to go to add light and then lamp. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on these spots here where the reflection is for the light. So here and here and here and here, 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 and here. All right, cool. All right, so the other thing I wanted to do is I'm going to add another type of light. I'll just use a candle. But what I'm going to do is at each entrance, like where these are, I'm going to put like red or green. So at the very end here, I'll change it to like a red. So that means they can't go any further or it's locked. So I'll go ahead and do that too. But I want to get rid of this last one maybe down here. Actually, it'll just stay. I'll just do it from that point. So this will be the start of the map, and then all the way to the end is where the red one is. So I'll go ahead and go to candle mode. So I'm going to go to candle and change the color to like a greenish, kind of a bright green color. There we go. Hit OK. And then the preset was a candle. I'm in lighting, candle, green. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this. So there's that. And there's one there, there, and there. Is there any more? Nope. And now I'm going to do the same thing, but this time I'm going to go with a same thing, a candle, but I'm going to put a red one in there so that it means it's locked. So that'll be at the very end here. There's a red light. So let's see what we got. So go ahead and go back to play mode and turn off. Okay, so there's that. So turn on the, yeah, so it lights that up pretty well. So this is the subway car with the lighting on. So yeah, it lights it up pretty well. Can't really see the green very much, but it's there. It's kind of hard, but it's there. I could take out some of these lights, but then it kind of, it's not true to the dimension here. So anyways, so that's going to be something that you'll have to decide, on your own. So that's kind of some basic line of sight here. So now what I'm thinking about is let's find some context menus for the sound. So maybe you want to do the subway and, put this in your adventure somehow. So I'm going to go ahead and take this and close it, which is the asset window. And then this thing here, I'm going to put tram car or something like that. Something a little different than the basic file name. And then unidentify it. So when the players, when you share this to them, they see tram car. They don't see this. So that way it's a lot more immersion and less of that. And then go ahead and lock it and maybe shrink it a little because it's a little big. And then we'll put it there. Let me bring up the combat tracker, see if I have anyone on here. So yeah, so this is Manila Ice. How funny. Let's see. So Taki, let's put them on the map, see what it looks like here. All right, so when he goes through here, yeah, I don't know if I like that because it highlights that window too much. Yeah, so you can't get through there, so I have to open the window. Is this one open already? Yeah, this one's already open. Yeah, so they can move through there, which is what I wanted. But as far as this yellow shading goes, yeah, it's not very cool for me. But for players, they probably won't see that. We'll find out. I have to look through the other side of this. But for the time being, I'll just leave it like that. Now, if I wanted some audio associated with this, there's a couple things I'd want. So if this is going to be in a subway with an encounter in there, we'd like to build some basic encounters, maybe some low-level mooks, some gang members. Just have them at the ready in case you need them. They don't necessarily have to be on the map right away. So just make like a story entry of your choice and build on it, and go ahead and just take this and build a couple subway encounters or something related to this map, and then link it to that story. So while I'm thinking about that, I got to go through the sounds and think about what sounds I actually want, because I'm going to build my own sound set for this subway. And you could do this with your other content as needed until they come out with some official packs. So here's the sound context menu, and these are the Cyberpunk sounds. So here's some city ambience traffic. So this should be playing in the background now. Yeah, that's more for outside. Let me try I have this filtered to, it might be the urban renewal that we need. But I'm going to go ahead and unfilter this because that's going to narrow down my search. So I'm going to go ahead and just look for subway without any sound set, because they might have some generic ones too that will work. So I'll do subway and see if we can get something like that. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, everyday heroes. So this isn't even, this isn't even Cyberpunk, so this might help.
Caution, doors closing.
Oh yeah, that's really cool. Let's try a mood. Busy subway journey. So what I would do with something like this is take the subway sound and implant it or get some sort of context menu or a sound set started for the subway. So when your players get onto the subway, they can you trigger the sound from the chat area or from the context menu. So that's pretty cool. I like it. So I just turned that down a little bit, but you can turn it down from here. And then I also have a filter on this actual OBS. So when I talk, it actually kind of lowers the music or the background noise. But this is the journey, the bus subway journey. So what you could do with that is you can create your own sound set. So I would make my own group again, and maybe call this a subway sounds or whatever. And then what we'll do is build story entries or and the sound sets based off of the content you want. So you create a new one, and you have to pick the type. So there's a trigger, there's content, and the content could be story links, or it could be anything you want. So content is probably what we want. So when we have content, we're going to pick story, and then we're going to, do the links here. So you put the story link in here, you put the sound set link in here, and then any associated sounds with it. So in this case, this would be like the subway thing here. So I would put the links to that in here. So that's cool. Let's see. Let's try a distant train arriving. So there's a lot of good stuff here. Let's try that one. So that's a more of a sound effect, though. So that might go into the sound links themselves. So this is train arriving, distant. So you might use this for sound effects. And then there's a distant leaving. So you can drag and drop that over here. And then when you have a story set up, a story entry for the subway, you have that. Oh, okay, there's the subway. Oh, how cool. So you can really make this kind of your own thing. And what's nice about this is once you build this asset, you can link it right to the map. And then when you're using this map, if you don't want to dig through the story entries, you can just pop this up to whatever part of the story you're in, and you can have sound links popped up. So I'm going to call this subway scene or something like that. And then we'll say we'll say that this is a more like mood. We kind of want to have like a way to sort these too. So this is a mood for the subway scene. And then we'll do a train leaving. That's really cool. A subway station humming. So let's put that in here. I gotta unlock it. It's really cool. Let's hear the humming part. Yeah, I just hear this rumbling. It's kind of hard to hear on the stream, but... That's really cool. Let's see. Quiet subway journey. This is a mood, so let's see if that... I don't think I would use that for this, but let's see what it gives us. Huh. Sound set links. Wow, it's really cool. Yeah, I'm kind of getting lost in this, but nonetheless, this is the sort of thing you could do to embellish your game. So let's do a gang. Let's see what we get here. So these are all kind of, let's see, gang combat. This is more kind of, let's see, strange eons. That's that. Spelljammer. Maybe this would, I don't know, we'll see. Let's see what this sounds like. This is more fantasy, but... Huh. Interesting. Yeah, that's kind of swords and sorcery stuff. We don't need that. Let's try Cyberpunk fight. Let's see if they can... So if you were going to have some sort of action go on, like an encounter when you introduce the NPCs, we can assign that to a different sound set, but still be linked within the links. So that way, if you have a fight or something, you can have that trigger on the based off the output from the combat tracker. And if you go over to the wiki or the Atlassian guide, it kind of goes over this, how you set these up. So it says that game masters can control the sound sets from sound setting window directly or from the sound's context panel using sound sets. Sounds can be played or stopped using the action buttons directly associated with them. All sounds can be stopped by using Stop All button in the sound context menu. So there's those two. So now it splits the audio between global effects like sound effects, music, and moods, and then one-shots. So global sounds usually cover ambience and background noises, while one-shots are short event sounds like sword clashing, that sort of stuff. So using the sound sets, they're purchased from Fantasy Grounds directly if they're available, or you can create them manually, which is kind of what I'm alluding to here. So these are how you would set it up if there was already a module. In this case, there is no module. So let's see if this will go into creating sound sets manually. So to create them, like I've done before, you create a new sound set, you open the sound sets from the panel from the sidebar, and then the green plus button, and it could be a trigger sound set or a content sound set. A trigger is set automatically responding for actions. A content one is populating the sound context panel with sound suggestions when the corresponding window is open, like a story, reference manual entry, or an image, or an NPC record. So if an NPC comes up on the map, or you have a special guy like a boss or something in your encounter, it will bring up the context menu. It doesn't necessarily play them, but it will give you the links for them so that they're ready for you if you want to trigger them. So then the next step says not every rule set supports extra trigger events. You may only have chat trigger, or you might just have triggers like cast, attack, fumble, attack, hit. So it depends on the rule set, of course. However, every rule set should be able to support NPC and story content. So that's a good thing to know. So the next step is choosing which type of sound set you want, trigger or content, and then selecting appropriate subtypes for that sound set. Like triggers have chat, attack, cast, and contents has stories, NPCs, and images. I see. So going back to your sound setting panel, once you've already connected Syrinscape, you can search through the list, find the sounds that you would like, and then drag them from the window onto your sound set. It will be added to your sound set for further use. So here's the sound settings, here's the sound, and then there's a pattern that triggers this one for the chat window. So the patterns are usually keywords. And then there's advanced word matching strings where you can put like this ampersand and brackets, which will essentially give you a whole range of sounds instead of just one. So for example, if you select the regex, the pattern will be set up like this right here, this actual text. Then the sound set will only trigger if the word has abacus in it. So it's kind of like a this only type thing. And it was the first word in the sentence. So regex pattern matching can create smarter chat interactions for your players and may allow them to trigger sound effects in specific situations. For example, they've created 9 different chat trigger sounds which specify death commands. If the sound system can recognize these patterns in the chat when a player has been downed, it will play the matching sound. So there's dying, death, there's all these different ones, critical failure, success. So this is how you set up like more advanced triggers. And then you can also set up for damage types. So it'll look for damage, and then you would type necrotic. So anytime you had, and this is D&D, of course, but nonetheless, you get the idea that you can do some pretty amazing stuff. And then this story entry stuff is what I really like, is the cave mouth will reference that, and it will bring up all these sounds based off the cave mouth that you've selected. So there's story links, and then there's the sound set links, and then the sound itself. So this is pretty cool. I really like how this turned out. So that's basically what I wanted to cover, is just that you have choices to do your own sound sets if you can't wait for them to be put into Fantasy Grounds. And once you get an idea of how it works, and once you have it set up in Fantasy Grounds, you can make your own sound sets, kind of like what I've done here. And then I linked it to this, and then you can also create a story entry, link the map, link the sound set, link your text and everything in there, and link all your encounters, and you can kind of make your own little like story entry, and then make several sets, like make one for a bar, make one for a subway, make one for one of the night markets. Make them for different scenarios that you might need in your game, because I guarantee you that when the sound sets come out officially for a rule set like this, it's going to go off the modules and not necessarily what your needs are. So there might be something in between that you need for your adventures. So it's better off just building your own and getting familiar with it anyways, even if you plan on buying the sets or not. That way you can kind of get a feel for how it works and why it may be broken in the future and that sort of thing. But this is a really cool way to add immersion. You got this moving tunnel, you got a battle map, you got these, you got all these really cool sound context menus. You got all these really cool ways to dazzle your friends when they're playing. So anyways, take care, folks. I don't want to ramble too much longer. You have fun. And remember that Fantasy Grounds is not just D&D. There's Cyberpunk, there's Fallout, there's, Starfinder, there's, Traveler. There's all kinds of sci-fi rule sets as well. I'm only doing this one because it's one of the rule sets I really enjoy. I also like Alien, and I like Shadow the Demon Lord for fantasy, and so you just pick your favorites. The only reason I do these is because these are the ones I kind of know about. I don't know about all the different rule sets, but I'm pretty sure that Smiteworks is working on some Pathfinder stuff and other sound sets. So we'll see how it goes. But they got enough work for them. They've got a huge back catalog. So I imagine it'll take some time to get these in. But anyhow, folks, take care. Have a good rest of your week. Happy Monday.